Lies of omission are one of the more subtle yet amazingly effective forms of lying. Instead of making an openly deceptive statement that is easily disprovable, the practiced, intelligent, and successful liar will withhold some key pieces of information and intermingle it with things that are somewhat correct and ultimately lead you away from the truth. Now, that was a pretty heavy paraphrasing of Adeline Birch there, but the idea is the same. How many of you remember Genesis 3:1, King James Bible, that said, "Now the serpent was more subtle than any beast of the field which the Lord God had made." Subtlety being the key here. Now, this day after Thanksgiving, what if I told you this wonderful, delicious meal that you're looking at in front of you on the screen was pure poison? Some of you are like, wait, Florida Maquis, did somebody put poison in it? No. Potatoes, carrots, parsley, and this is actually lamb stew, is poisonous. And if you eat this, you're going to be poisoning your Florida Maquis. Have you lost your mind? People have been eating these things for thousands of years. In fact, some of the most long-lived and healthy societies swear by lamb as part of their diet. Why are you saying it's poison? Well, it's not me that's saying it's poison. It's someone else that everybody trusts. RFK Jr. is a flaming moron, and I'm going to prove it in facts. And you won't have to believe me. I'm going to show other sources that I know you trust and I know you believe. RFK Jr. claims fluoride in drinking water is dangerous. You see, this is the lie of omission. This is where he's not telling you the entire truth of the story. And trust me, hear me out, watch the whole video, and then take it to whoever you want to try and disprove without getting overly emotional about it. And, of course, leaving out anything that I'm going to say. Now, real quick, thank you to everyone who's joined us over the Florida Maquis Patreon channel. I very, very much appreciate you guys that have showed up over there and said, Florida Maquis, we're going to help you. We're going to help you stand in the breach, especially now that we know the left has lost its mind completely. The censorship is just going to get nothing but worse and worse. And we want to see you stay here. But to do that, I know we need to step up just a small amount, $1 a month. That's it. Even less if you sign up for an entire year. Fully refundable for 90 days. If it's not for you, no questions asked. It's getting out of the end of November. It'll be the end of February before you'd have to make a decision. Recently, 24 hours, 48 hours ago, we put up brand new video. Now it was for the $5, $10, and $15 folks, but there are hundreds and hundreds of never before seen videos here on YouTube for those at the base level, the $1 a month level. Would love to have you over there. Thank you so much for being there. I very, very much appreciate it. Let's get right to it. How many of you have heard of these places called blue zones? Now, it has nothing to do with politics. What it has to do with is there are these places around the world where people live markedly longer, healthier lives than anywhere else. And there have been studies done, and they have come to some conclusions about why the people of Loma Linda, California, Nicoya, Costa Rica, Sardinia, Italy, Icaria, Greece, and Okinawa, Japan, they all have something in common. And they have it in common with Russia. 60 will soon be young, Russian health official. Perceptions of aging are changing rapidly in the modern world, the head of the Federal Medical Biological Agency has said. The boundaries of what we consider a young adult could soon be increased to 60 years old. They'll say a young person will be 45. Now, what does that have to do with our original statement about this being poison? Well, you see, things like lamb and carrots and parsley and russet potatoes all have something in common. You know what that thing in common is? They're all, along with buckwheat, a very good source of fluoride. That's right, rye, oats, bran, walnuts, cashews, almonds, potatoes, spinach, oranges, oranges. Anybody think there are people dying early in Florida? Grapefruit, parsley. All good sources of fluoride. But wait a minute, we've been told fluoride is horrible. Well, guess what? Where people are living much longer lives, they're eating the stuff called kasha in Russia. It's one of the most common dishes. And it has oatmeal and buckwheat and grains in it. And strangely enough, these are things that are all loaded with naturally occurring fluoride. Sardinians call for formal recognition of diet, insist that secret to long life can be found in their traditional diet of lamb, roast piglet, milk, and cheese. Now let's get right to the facts. Fluoridation Today, biolays.com. According to data taken from the USDA, fluoride is naturally present in a large range of foods with a wide range of concentrations. Foods include raisins, russet potatoes, lamb, carrots, wine, black tea, and parsley. Now, what happened before there was fluoride in the water? What happened in this country before there was fluoride in the water? You see, you've heard Mr. Kennedy, who was a Democrat his whole life, just like Trump, who was a member of the Kennedy clan his whole life, that you would have dismissed out of hand unless he was associated with Trump. You'd have called him a wild kook 2 years ago or 3 years ago. But now, because he's aligned with Trump, all of a sudden he is all-seeing, all-knowing, everything. But let's look at the facts. In the 1950s, almost all children and adults experienced tooth decay, and many experienced severe tooth decay. It was a major public health problem in the U.S. in 1960. You ready for this? 50% of all adults age 65 were edentulous, meaning they had no natural teeth. Now, think about that for a minute. Those of you in my audience who are in that age range, 65. Imagine if half of your friends didn't have any natural teeth. Water fluoridation has played a very important role in helping to reduce the prevalence of complete tooth loss from 50% to 10% today. 50% to 10%. You see, let me explain what RFK Jr. is looking at and why he removing some information makes you believe something that isn't true. He's doing it because he's removing certain statistics about he calling it quote unquote dangerous. Now, funny story. How many of you think the Patriot nurse would lead you wrong? One of her most effective herbs that she says that people should have in their pantries is oat straw. Oats are full of fluoride, as are a lot of different teas. Just go to the Patriot Nurse and go to her channel and look up tea, search tea, and look at all the different videos that she's had over the years. But let's get right to the facts. Foods with fluoride, which are the best? Black tea, coffee, shrimp, raisins, cooked oatmeal, carrots, spinach, rice, asparagus, oysters, boiled potatoes. What do these all have in common? What they have in common is this is the diet of people who live the longest. Whether it's Okinawa, Japan, used to be Hong Kong. Longest, healthiest lives are associated with these things that naturally have a ton of fluoride in them. Now, how can that possibly be? Here are the facts. You ready? Look at all of these pictures. How many of you thought that when you were watching Red Fox back then that he was only 48 years old? Sanford and Sons. A lot of people are like, man, he looked like more like he was close to his 60s. By modern standards, that's what it would look like. Edith from All in the Family was only 44 at that time. That's barely old enough to be a grandma. Flo was only 39. Alice was only 43. I think most people with the general consensus would be like, wow, these people look a lot older than what their ages were. Now, compare that to modern celebrities and their ages and how old they are and what they look like. Clint Eastwood is 94. and he's still out doing things. Chuck Norris is in his 80s. Al Pacino in his 80s. You see, here's what they're leaving out. And look, same thing, Diane Keaton is 78 years old. Susan Sarandon, 78 years old. Dolly Parton is 78 years old. See, what's the fact? Here's what RFK Jr. isn't telling you. In the 1950s, when they first began water fluoridation, now this is in thousands. You ready for this? In 1950, out of 150 million people that were in the United States at that time, only 2,300 out of 150 million, 2,300 out of 150 million made it to 100 years old. By 1980, it was 7 times that amount of people. Did our population increase 7 times? No. It had only doubled by then. And by now, by 2024, there are 50 times as many people with only 3 times the population, of 1950 to now, 150 million to not even really triple the population. There are 101.5 thousand people every year living to 100. Now, what does that mean? What's the issue there? You see, when RFJ says, oh, our society is so sick, look at all these, look at this health problem, that health problem, this other health problem, he's partially right. But the reason that he's right is because there are so many people living to older ages, and they will have all sorts of other problems. You see, back then, they just didn't live long enough to have the health problems that RFK Jr. is complaining about. That's the omission. That's the lie of omission. You can't compare health statistics from the 1950s and 60s to now because it wasn't the same representative group of people. There weren't as many 75, 80, 85, and 90-year-olds and 100-year-olds as a percentage of the population as there is now. So of course there are going to be all sorts of other issues with this problem and that problem and this other problem. But to say that it's because of fluoride is something called causation correlation. Fluoride is in all sorts of things that are associated with being wildly, wildly healthy. Natural sources of fluoride: spinach, grapes and raisins, vegetables, apple, potatoes, coffee, oatmeal. Some of the most healthy things on the planet are just chock-a-block full of fluoride. And you're never going to tell me that somebody who eats spinach every day, or has a glass of wine every day, or a cup of coffee every day, is going to be at risk of fluoride poisoning. Even though they contain far, far more amounts of fluoride than the water does. You see, that takes us all the way back to lies of omission. What RFK Jr. is not telling you is that while, yes, there are more health problems today, it's because there are a much larger group of people who are in the age range that you would experience health problems, meaning over 60, over 70, over 80. It doesn't have anything to do with the fluoride. There was another statistics I wanted to share too. I almost forgot to. In 1948, President Harry S. Truman signed the National Dental Research Act, establishing the National Institute of Dental Research at the NIH. The act was in response to the fact that more than 20% of young men drafted for military service were rejected due to dental issues. 1 in 5 military-aged males could not serve. 1 in 5 military-aged males could not serve because their teeth were so bad. And it was going to actually affect our working population. And now, in 2024, Doge. That's what I was going to. Financially, the agency adds community water fluoridation is cost effective. For every dollar spent, communities of 1,000 or more people save an estimated $20 in dental treatment costs. The facts are just the facts. He's a moron. He was a flaming moron when he was a Democrat. He's a flaming moron now. Just because, Donald Trump loves him doesn't mean he hasn't changed a damn thing. The guy works out a lot. Wonderful. Fantastic. He works out and looks really good for his age. But he's a flaming moron. If he wants to take fluoride out of the drinking water, which is impossible, by the way. You can read why fluoride is so hard to remove from water. Even the most advanced filters can't do it. And once again, it is naturally occurring. It is a naturally occurring mineral. That is where? Right here. Lamb stew. Lamb stew, something that people have been eating since biblical times. Naturally occurring in carrots, naturally occurring in potatoes, naturally occurring in parsley, naturally occurring in lamb. And I'll bet if I would look, there's probably some in peas too, given the amount of uptake that you have in fruits and vegetables. And fish. And even the Russians. If you look at their diet and you compare it to the list of things that have a ton of fluoride in it, guess what you're going to find? So, once again, I don't think the Patriot nurse would lead you wrong. I don't think she would intentionally not do any research into what she's recommending people eat as far as a healthy diet and use as far as medicinal herbs. And one of her big ones is oat straw. And as we can prove, full of fluoride, naturally. Look it up. Foods and fluoride, which are best? I know a lot of guys that use black tea, a lot of older guys, as kind of a boost in the bedroom, so to speak. I know a lot of guys that work out that look absolutely fantastic, that swear by cooked oatmeal. Boiled potatoes. And there are foods here that you don't get much fluoride from, and I see a lot of things that a lot of people like RFK have said are bad. So you would think they would be suggesting bananas and white bread because it's low in fluoride, but they don't, do they? So, just saying. The serpent was more subtle than any beast of the field, and the best lies of omission, are subtle and effective. When you only put out specific pieces of information to rile up a group of people, and then they take those cherry-picked pieces of information and don't put it against the entire backdrop. Factually speaking, our grandparents and great-grandparents were way more unhealthy than we were. And how do we know this? A lot of them died at much younger ages than we will. A lot of them died at much younger ages than we will. And I'm going to tell you right now, this isn't really tied to the video, but they're projecting in 30 years another quadrupling. Another quadrupling of the amount of people living to 100. And you know what that has to do with? That started back here in the 80s. And you know what it was? Cardio. Oh, I can't believe you said that, Monkey. The only ways that you should ever work out is with heavy weights and just eating tons of meat and fat and butter. Yeah, okay, whatever. How many of you remember the cardio craze? Back in the 80s and everybody doing aerobics. 10 years. In 10 years, the amount of people living to 100 tripled. Facts are the facts. So I'll give you these links. Once again, thank you everyone for being here. I very, very much appreciate it. I know this is going to ruffle some feathers because everybody wants to bow down and worship the guy who just won the mob rule. And everything he says now will be automatically all goodness and righteous. Why? Well, Trump won the election, so therefore anything he does is going to be good. And all of his appointments are all going to be perfect and wonderful. And we're just going to do everything they say and follow right along and march along like sheep. Yes, you are. Because anyone who says anything different, of course, oh, you wanted Kamala. That's why we have the Patreon channel. We have black and white thinking. We have causation, correlation. We have, let's see, what else? So many others. Straw man, anecdotal evidence, all of these different things, all playing together. And that's what we talk about at the Patreon channel. Psychological operations, the 24 cognitive biases, the 24 logical fallacies, and I just showed 4 of them just in this one topic. So I will leave it there. God bless. Pray for each other. Pray for me. I'll pray for you. Lift each other up. Like, share, subscribe. We'll see you guys next time.